Welcome to Anchored, Biblical Foundations for Everyday Life, a podcast ministry of First Baptist Church of Calvert County. In a world that feels increasingly unstable, this podcast exists to help you build your life on the unchanging truth of God's Word. Each week, Pastor Don Veazey addresses real-life issues from a biblical perspective, so you can think clearly, live faithfully, and walk confidently with Christ. Let's get anchored.
Welcome back to Anchored at Home, Biblical Foundations for Everyday Life. Catherine, last time we got involved in a conversation about this very important topic of love and reverence. And we started by defining the terms. So if you missed that, I'd encourage you to go back and watch the previous episode, because it's very important that we understand what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And so we defined what love is biblically, what reverence is biblically. And then we pointed out the fact that it's the job of a husband not just to love, but to love in such a way that his wife's heart receives love. So I have to know you.
Mm-hmm.
I have to know how you feel love.
Yeah.
Not what I think is love or what I think you feel is love.
Mm-hmm.
I have to know you well enough. Now, there's a great way to do that. And that is simply talking to you and asking you.
Yeah, listening.
It would be very okay to just say, Catherine, would you help me know how you feel loved?
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure most wives could answer that question.
Yeah.
I'm sure if a husband were to ask, is there some ways I could improve in trying to love you? Because I want to love you. And then we mentioned the same thing for a wife, that it's her job to reverence her husband in the way that he feels reverenced, not just because she assumes she is.
Yes.
Because in her heart she wants to. She has to do it the way that he feels reverence.
Yes.
And that, again, may be different in some details for every man, for every woman. And again, a great way for a wife to know her husband how he feels reverence would be to ask him.
Mm-hmm.
Are there things that I could do to help you feel reverence, or things I'm doing that communicate just the opposite? Because I don't think most husbands and wives set out to not love or to not reverence. I think a lot of times we just assume we are.
Yeah.
Because in our minds we are. But that doesn't mean our spouse is receiving it as that. And so last time we got started by talking about an area on your side about not feeling heard and disregarded. And then we talked about on the man's side about not feeling heard when there's interruption taking place.
Yeah.
So let's move on to another of these topics, because we're going to deal with several of them in coming weeks. So, Catherine, what is the next one that you would like to mention, that whether it's personally for you or, again, something that we have heard and learned over years of ministry, that as a wife, this is a way that you don't feel loved?
This is one that we came up with as well. Not feeling loved could present itself in feeling unnoticed or unappreciated or emotionally insecure in that way. So unnoticed in her emotions, or causing her to be insecure or unappreciated. And that would look like unappreciated could look like letting her take care of the family schedule completely, or adding to her workload, so therefore she's not feeling appreciated.
Valued.
Well, that's a better word. And so that causes a woman to not feel loved.
Okay.
And we talked about when we were preparing about what that would look like on a daily basis, ways it could look like.
Sure.
And so, for instance, adding to her workload, we talked about, she cleans the kitchen and there's dirty dishes in the dishwasher, but she hasn't started it because it's not full. and he gets a cup and then he sets it on the counter right above the dishwasher. Why, and that's not a huge deal. And we, by the way, ladies, we don't even make a big deal about it. Don't get in a fight with your husband because he leaves the cup on the counter. But we're talking about, if he does that and then he leaves his shoes in the living room and his socks right next to the laundry instead of in it, things like that. And pretty soon he's left pieces of himself all over the house. And then that's creating more work. And even though those things in themselves is not work, but he just assumes instead of saying I'm an adult here too, I can put that cup in the dishwasher. He's creating more work for her. And even though, again, we'd question how much work that is, it's the lack of respect for her as well. And that makes her feel unappreciated.
Sure.
I don't appreciate the work you already did. I'm just going to add to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so then all that says to her is he doesn't even love me enough to act like an adult and put his cup away or whatever. And so that speaks to a woman. And if you can, I've had many, many conversations over the years with wives, just like, especially young moms who are chasing toddlers around. The last thing they want is for their workload to be added to.
Sure.
And so that's a rough one for the young moms. But it can go throughout an entire marriage. So that's one way that is like that. And we're not trying to get on to husbands, and that's not my goal, but we're just talking about ways that she can feel unloved. So the flip side of that, you mentioned of kind of the flip of being unnoticed or unappreciated was.
Well, I would say it this way, it would be the idea of being compared to, somebody else, another, figure in your life, and saying, why can't you be more like so-and-so? So even just using your scenario a little bit, why can't you be like ever who? Because they always put their cup in the dishwasher.
Yeah.
So just, and it may seem insignificant, and I don't think most wives would set out to say, I wish I wasn't married to you. I wished I was married more like to him.
Correct.
That's not what they're saying. But that idea of being compared to another man, why can't you be more like so-and-so, is extremely, and I'd put it really high on the list of a way in which a husband does not feel reverenced.
Well, to a husband, is that saying that to a husband though, even if that's not what she feels like she's saying?
In a way,
yeah.
Saying I wish you weren't you.
We talked about this the other day in preparation. My dad used to, every Monday morning, he'd sit down at the dining table and he'd pay bills from the week prior. I mean, that's just was his routine. That's how he did it. It worked for him. And so I didn't have brothers, and he was the only guy I was ever around 24/7, So it was my only experience in that regard. And after we got married, I just thought that's what the man did. He sit down at the dining room table every Monday and pay the bills. So when we got married, and I'm okay using me as a bad example, we got married and you didn't sit down on Monday morning and pay the bills at the dining table. We married 25 years this week, and you still don't sit down at the dining room table on Monday mornings, pay the bills. And that's fine, because that's not how you do it. But when we first got married, I know we talked about this. We kind of laughed now, but it wasn't funny, really. But I used to say, well, why can't you be like Dad and pay the bills on Monday? That's just security for me. Well, truth is, I was just dropping words that aren't healthy for a relationship. But that was a good example of comparing you, and to me, it was just like, this is what you're supposed to do, because this is how it was always done.
Yeah.
So why don't you do that? But to him, you've said, I was comparing you to Dad. And it was like, you didn't marry your dad. You married me, right? And is that a good example of?
Sure. And, in regards to that, it's a strange dynamic about that comparison. Even somebody like your dad. I mean, I know obviously you're not, you just, that's what you understood as a way something's to be done. And just because I did something different didn't mean the way I did it was wrong.
Correct.
And so for you though, and because you are, and this is where people are different. where for some wives, this may not be a big deal, but you're very numbers oriented. You're very much, even in a good, strong way, financially oriented and goal oriented. And so for you, as you said, just physically putting your eyes on watching the bills get paid, or money put in savings, or money invested, for you,
The stability of
yeah, there's some love
Yeah.
there. And even if we're not physically talking about it, you're not over my shoulder. Oh, did you write the check out right? You never did any of that kind of stuff. But just that idea of, well, you're not doing it the way you're supposed to do it. And even though there's not a right way or a wrong way, but that comparison, it's like nails on a chalkboard.
Yes.
And very, very belittling. And so I would encourage wives out there that even if your husband, and maybe he's not paying the bills, maybe they're behind, but still comparing is not going to be a way to accomplish what you want it to accomplish.
You can't reach him that way.
No.
Just like you can't reach me by just saying, unappreciating it, me, or what is it? No, at no point in history has a woman calmed down just because she was told to calm down. So you're downplaying her emotions,
that's no big deal.
downplaying her.
Yeah.
And that's not love either.
Yeah.
And that's not reverence.
Yeah.
And
so if I come at you and say, Catherine, it's just laundry. Catherine, it's just dishes.
Just a cup.
It's no big deal.
Yeah.
But by demeaning that or belittling that, and by no means is that all you do, obviously. You work outside the home, just like many of our ladies in our audience works outside the home. And so a good way, I think, as a husband then to show appreciation and love for you is that, especially when both are working, that when we come home, we share that workload too.
Mm-hmm.
So an expectation that I have, well, I come home and so I don't have to do anything because I've been at work all day.
Yeah.
Well, you've been at work all day too.
Yeah.
And so an idea that now I get to come home and just sit while you fulfill all these things. Well, that's not showing appreciation for you.
Right.
Because you're helping meet our needs financially. And therefore I ought to show you love by helping you in tasks that would be helpful to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I think that's a good way to show love.
So I think I'm appreciating these practical steps personally because it's a reminder for me. So hopefully it helps.
Sure.
Others as well.
Absolutely. So Catherine, what would be another area in that a wife would feel loved or unloved?
Okay. So another one we talked about was a lack of pursuit after marriage makes a wife feel unloved. I know God made it in a man to conquer.
Sure.
And so when he got the ring on the finger, he's conquered that. I mean, he has, and it is an element of victory. Look
Absolutely,
what I got,
it is.
and I'm not a man. God didn't make me that way, but it's very easy to see that.
Yep.
Clearly, I mean, men are like,
I conquered that.
It's like who's got the biggest
that mountain.
scar, They're proud of it. They want to show it off. And so,
look what it cost me.
And then it's like I got that prize, so to speak. Move on to the next thing. I don't mean to the next woman, but just they don't need to pursue. They don't think they've conquered that one.
Sure.
But to a wife, that's not acceptable.
Well, especially,
and really the Lord doesn't allow that either.
Especially when there's been in that pursuit process.
Yeah.
I think this is good to talk about because typically, as a man pursues, there's a lot of dinners, flowers, gifts, those physical things.
Yeah.
But I think more importantly than that, and I can just base this off you, but I know all the conversation we would have.
Yeah.
With no phones in our hands, of course, when we didn't even have cell phones, but we gave each other our undivided attention.
Yes.
And we would drop anything for each other, including school assignments, in college and different things. We dropped anything for each other.
Yeah.
And so, that level of pursuit, the longer that a couple is married, so as you mentioned a moment ago, Monday was 25 years for us. That if there's a great danger that now, and it goes back to what we've already talked about, if I'm more engaged to my phone, to social media, to the news, to the ball game, to my interests than to you, well, I'm not pursuing you.
Yeah.
And if I'm where before I might have been extremely thankful, or even, oh, I don't want to leave my clothes on the floor. I want to pick them up because I don't want her to,
Mhm.
and the longer that relationship goes, the easier it is to neglect that.
Yeah.
And so you feel unloved. So it's amazing. These are very
Mhm.
woven to
Yeah.
each other to express love.
So the flip of that for you would be,
Well, I would say it this way, and I want to give a little disclaimer here. Parents, if you have young ones listening, that maybe you put this on pause and listen to it yourself and then determine whether or not you want your kids to hear this. But I would say for a man, for me, the repeated, I want to say this in the right way, just the repeated rejection of intimacy without, I'm not saying that you don't have a right to not be in the mood or to say no,
Yeah.
but just the repeated rejection with no conversation,
Yeah.
no explanation.
Yeah.
Kind of the
No,
old joke, I have a headache, but to just reject that again and again is and here's where it hits a man. It's not even always about the physical act. It is about, you're rejecting me.
Yeah.
And as a man, one of the ways that why it is such a big deal with men is it is really a way in which we feel, and I'm going to use your word, loved. To be desired that way, to feel desired that way. And so that repeated rejection really with and again, I'm not saying there's never reasons.
Sure.
We understand that. But when it's just become routine, no.
Yeah.
Not in the mood, this, that, always have an excuse, then that is, to a man, that is perceived as, I don't want you.
Yeah.
Not, I don't want the act. I don't want you. And that is extremely hurtful in a man to be continually rejected in the area of intimacy.
And you've told me before, we've talked about this, that it's not just the act of marriage that has to be rejected for you to feel that way.
Sure.
It could just be a lack of response to your touch.
Yep.
That in general.
Sure.
That that's not healthy either.
If you're rejecting that.
Right. And I know that for a woman, that it's easy to say, I don't feel loved because the only time he wants to touch me is when he thinks it's going to lead to intimacy. Sure. And so that makes a woman not feel loved either.
Sure.
She's like, you just want to,
sure. That's all you care about.
I mean, we're married here. We're talking to married people. You just want me for my body. You don't want me for me. And so that's where the lack of pursuit starts to be registered to the wife. It's like, you're not pursuing me because you want me. You're pursuing me because of what you might get out of it in the end. And that is that speaks volumes to the wife.
Sure.
He's not loving me.
Well, we've talked about this before. We've read it in places on books about intimacy in marriage, that it's important for a man to understand that I have to love you all day. If I give you no attention, if I give you no touch, and I'm not just holding your hand, just walking by and touching you and making that physical connection, but it becomes bedtime, and all of a sudden, oh, now I'm going to show her attention. And
he wants me to be attentive.
Sure. Absolutely.
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that, it's probably not, it may happen out of duty. It may happen out of, I know this is right to go ahead and do this for my husband, but your heart's not going to be in it.
Yeah.
And so I would encourage all the men listening, because you need to talk to your wife. You need to listen to your wife, and you need to love her literally all the time. And yes, every man hopes every touch will lead there. Absolutely. That is honest truth, but it's not going to. And you need to know, you need to feel loved, and just to know that I care more about you than the act. And I can do that with my physical touch.
And your ear.
My ear.
Yeah. If she feels disregarded, or,
Yeah, well, that's part of loving you all day.
Yes.
I'm
it's
tuning
not
into
just
you.
about making a physical
Sure.
connection throughout the day.
Sure.
You could do all the right things, and if you're not tuned into me throughout the day, then
would it be right to say you're still going to interpret that as
absolutely,
you just want my body?
Absolutely, because but you, just like anything, we can tell, as human nature can tell, when someone is real and when they're
Sure.
fake, and our spouses can tell. We can tell with each other when we're tuned in for the wrong reason.
Sure.
And so it makes a difference at the end of the day. And I don't mean literally, but
Sure.
I guess it could too.
and this is something, Catherine,
and that's okay.
We're going to come back to in time to deal with just the act of marriage, because in recent years, and part of it I think is just younger couples are more open to talking about it than sometimes older couples. But this has become really one of the top issues that we have dealt with in couples, is this struggle of intimacy. And so it's a huge need. But
and we know that one of the reasons why that is,
sure,
that the church almost has failed their young people.
Absolutely.
If I could say it that way, or you can finish my thought, that way you say
it. Well, we have, churches have neglected this area of life, and many parents have neglected this area of life in preparing their children for marriage.
Or treating it like it's bad.
Yeah, like it's a bad thing, and it's not. God ordained it, and it is the main thing that differentiates us between being roommates. We're not roommates.
Any other relationship.
Yep. We are husband and wife. And with that comes privilege, and a unique privilege, and a unique joy in experiencing each other's bodies to their fullest. And so we've almost made it taboo. Yeah. And it shouldn't be. Now,
I think the devil loves that.
Absolutely.
Because he's having fun with the fact that in the name of Christian,
marriages are being destroyed.
They are, because they are ill prepared.
Yep.
They have expectations that are unreasonable on either ditch of the road. They have home lives that are terrible examples. And it's just, there's so much that people are fighting today. And I know there's no new thing under the sun. I realize that. But there are challenges. And then the internet and what is available, everything has been produced to be something that it's not.
Sure. And unreasonable.
And now these couples get married and they think they know what they're getting into, but it's just, it's hard. And marriage is hard anyway. It can be. And then you add these hurdles, and we've dealt with a lot of young couples over the years that it breaks your heart.
It does.
And so
well, let me remind us what the Bible says in 1 Corinthians 7. Let the husband render unto the wife due benevolence, and likewise also the wife unto the husband. The wife hath not power of her own body, but the husband, and likewise also the husband hath not power of his own body, but the wife. Defraud ye not one another, except it be with consent for a time. And Paul there with the church of Corinth was dealing with the act of intimacy. And so we have to understand this is a Bible subject, a Christian subject to discuss. And the passage is mutual. It speaks both to the husband and to the wife. And if we kind of wrap this idea of this verse around this, that a husband, now, and we have to be careful not to use this passage as ammunition.
Correct.
And throw it in her face and say, look, it's right here.
Hey, you're not allowed to say no or whatever.
Or to turn around and a wife dismiss it.
Correct.
That it's unimportant. And hey, it's, the Bible says we don't have to do this, with except for consent with the time. So we have to not use it inappropriately, because that's possible. So again, one of the greatest things that a couple can do in this area is to communicate, is to sit down and have honest, and I'm going to go ahead and use the word intimate conversation about the area of physical intimacy.
Yes.
To talk about this. So why for a man, why the repeated, is it due to I'm not loving you? You don't feel loved. And of course, at different stages of life, young mom, busy, tired, worn out. And you have to be purposeful in this. And sometimes it sounds strange. You got to put it on the calendar, or else it's not going to happen. And so it's important, though, because I want to address the men, that we can't just show up in the bedroom at night and care about our wife.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to be perceived as love. And I think it's very important for the wife to understand just how much this means to a husband. And that rejection, even if you have valid reasons, if it's repeated and repeated, there is not much greater show of a lack of reverence, because again, you're not setting out to say, I don't respect you, I don't show reverence to you, but it is taken more as not you're rejecting intimacy, you're rejecting me as a man and as your husband.
Yeah.
And that repeated again and again begins to turn his pursuit for you off. So it's kind of a vicious circle. Where again, we have to take personal responsibility and say, okay, I can't demand or desire if I'm not showing love.
Well, and is it Paul that warns against, or Peter against, be not bitter against them, your wives, where it's easy for things like this to turn into bitterness.
Absolutely.
Because we want to hold
resentment.
And
Absolutely.
so we're cautioned about that. And so I don't think he would caution us if it wasn't possible.
Sure.
So this is the way that a wife can not feel loved, and a husband.
And again, it's a very touchy subject, and one that we will come back to in great detail. But for now, we appreciate you joining us today. And so as we wrap this up in these two areas, as a husband, again, I need to make sure that I am not taking you for granted, that I am not adding to your workload just because I'm lazy or just because I don't think it's important. And it's important that I'm not just touching you or loving you or listening to you or paying attention to you because I hope something happens.
And it's important that I'm not comparing you with other men or people in general, or your actions, and then not rejecting you as in any intimate or personal, deep way that can cause resentment in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us today here at Anchored.
Thanks for listening to Anchored, Biblical Foundations for Everyday Life, a podcast ministry of First Baptist Church of Calvert County. Our prayer is that today's episode helped you see how the Bible speaks clearly and practically into everyday life. For more information about this ministry, or to learn more about First Baptist Church of Calvert County, join us again next week as we continue to stay anchored in God's truth.